So today we have some special questions for you. This is what I'm dubbing internally the Trump-isode. The new administration has brought new rules and new changes in the government, and we are getting a lot of questions from clients and prospective clients about the changes and the pending changes.
Welcome to the Physician Family Financial Advisors podcast, where physician moms and dads like you can turn today's worries about taxes and investing into all the money you need for retirement and college.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Renicky, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Ben Utley, certified financial planner and the service team leader here at Physician Family. This is a politically neutral podcast. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cover the questions. We're going to cover the facts as we understand them and the potential ramifications of the facts, which will, of course, be speculative because we won't know exactly. But we have, I believe, 5 or 6 questions today. So, Nate, let's hear the first question.
Yeah. One more thing is you did several hours of looking into this, so I'll just be the question asker today. So they get to hear from Ben Utley. All right. So first question is my federal pension at risk?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is probably not. And so, your federal pension is a promise of the government to pay you a lifetime income in retirement. So the things that have been proposed is a reduction in the pension through a cost of living adjustment. So, for example, when we run calculations, we assume an inflation rate for the cost of living that goes with these things such that your pension would go up every year. And so it has been proposed that those cost of living adjustments be eliminated or curtailed, which would essentially cost the government less and result in a lowering of your pension benefits. Another thing that we have heard is rather than calculating the pension benefit with the average of your high 3 years of compensation, they're looking at the high 5 years of compensation. So imagine that, your comp slopes up over the course of your career. The last 3 would be your highest. And if you include your 4th and your 5th to last years, that's going to lower the calculation. So again, it looks like it would be a reduction of the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, so, listeners, this is a complex topic, and these questions are unheralded. In my 30 years of doing this, I've never heard these questions. And so, admittedly, it's not top of mind. So I've got notes, and Nate's kind of coaxed me through those notes. So Nate, what else did I put in our notes about this?
It's you wrote a note that said requiring federal employees to contribute more money to their Thrift Savings
FERS.
Plan.
Yeah. So we have another FERS question, but it looks like the government would require greater contributions to the federal employees' retirement system.
Mm-hmm. And disallowing future employees to access the pension program.
Yeah, correct. Just turning it off for future employees. This is, here in the state of Oregon, which where our practice began, we have the public employees retirement system, and they've done things similar to that, which is rather than breaking promises to current employees, they're not making promises to new employees, and over time, that liability phases out for the government, and the benefits, of course, decrease to prospective employees. It'd be tantamount to kind of turning off Social Security for everybody born after a certain year, but keeping it in place for others, which we'll get into Social Security here as well.
Yeah. So I said I wouldn't talk, but you're just going to hear my thoughts, I guess, a little bit. And
this is very open mic-ish today.
Yeah, this is not answers. This is me just asking questions and talking. So, when I get questions kind of like this, like you said, we don't really get these questions, but say Social Security or student loans, that it tends to be a theme. Take the federal government out of it, but just employers, sometimes the federal government, where that's what they end up doing. They phase things out. I mean, and that's not to say that will happen this time, but usually they take a little bit of a slower approach. And I've seen my mom is in the state employee. She's been a state employee for 30 years. And I saw this with the pension. I looked at her pension compared to my brother's, who's also a teacher. and my brother's pension is tiny. My
Mm.
mom's is really big. And so I could see that happening. I mean, don't know if it will, but I could certainly see it. And just for people who already have their pension, that cost of living adjustment, it will take a bite out of your retirement, but that doesn't make the pension worthless. It's still worth a good amount of money. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
something to plan for, but not if you're already have your pension secured, not something necessarily to, it's not going to throw you off maybe as much as you might think, but it definitely will be difficult to make a change to become, let's say, I don't know how many doctors will want to work for the federal government without the pension because they don't tend to pay as well.
Yeah, that's a big benefit, but not all doctors do it for the money, right? So it
Sure.
kind of depends.
True. Okay, the next question is my FERS thrift savings plan at risk?
Yeah, I think that is the answer is more or less no. So the Federal Employees Retirement System Thrift Savings Plan is kind of like the United States government 401k. Kind of, it's the thing that you can put money into, probably more like a 403b. So the president has proposed changing out 3 of the 5 directors on the board of directors. So those would be political appointees, and they would be more likely to do what the president hopes to do. So that's one thing. We've also seen that the G fund, which has this sweetheart deal where it gets the yield on the 5-year treasury and there's no volatility up and down as interest rates rise and fall. So that's the sweet deal about the G fund. But the thing I did not know until I began doing this research is that the United States government, in extraordinary times, like when they failed to reauthorize the budget, in extraordinary times has the ability to borrow from the G fund. And they would still have to pay interest. The G fund value would still be there. It would still continue to accrue interest, but it is not beyond the reach of the United States government. So in terms of eliminating the Federal Employees Retirement System, I think that would be really slim. This was founded under a law passed by Congress in 1987. It's been around forever. So it would take an act of Congress to undo the Federal Employees Retirement System.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that, the judges who rule on these things are federal employees.
Right.
So it would not be good for them. And I think there's like the virtuous circle there is playing in our favor.
Yeah. And I don't see that as a huge savings. I mean, there for the government, right? I mean, it's not like pension necessarily. So
yeah,
probably
it's basically your money, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine the G fund is probably just a drop in the bucket of the overall value of the United States debt. So I think that's relatively small. But again, if you have everything loaded up in the G fund, which some people do due to the sweetheart deal, this might be a time to look at diversifying.
Yes. And what about, you said there's this potential for disallowing investments in China?
Yeah. Okay. So that was another thing. Thanks for hitting my notes.
Yeah.
So the president has proposed that, like you said, the I fund of the Federal Employees Retirement System, which is basically the developed foreign investment in stocks, that be disallowed from investing in China. And it's interesting because yesterday, you and I were both in a meeting with the guys at Dimensional Fund Advisors talking about, some of the way their funds are constructed. And I asked them what their take on China was, whether it should be excluded or included in an international index. And they said that they offer both flavors. They offer a ex-United States, ex-China fund, so international ex-China, and of course a fully constituted international fund. And they said that they're offering the ex-China because of investor demand. Yeah. However, when we looked at the research on this and we looked at the past performance, the ex-China fund performed more poorly. And part of that is because China is 1/4 of the emerging market economies. And so,
yeah.
I think people are shooting themselves in the foot when they're excluding China.
Yeah. That was really interesting when we asked them their take because Dimensional Funds does a superb job of research and making really well thought out funds.
Yeah, they think through everything.
Every little thing. It's great. But it was interesting to hear them say that it was by demand, and something popped in my head that just I thought about all the other funds out there, and I thought, just because they make a fund doesn't make it good. Just because people
just
are
because it's
asking for
ETF
something.
does not mean it's got the wand of approval, right?
Yeah, we all
So-
have to remember they're selling this, and they will create something for you if you ask for it, just like any profitable business would. Does not make it a good investment strategy. So yeah, he proposed that, and President Trump has proposed a lot of things, and it's some of them very nerve-wracking.
Some of them won't survive the courts, but they're
Right.
all nerve-wracking. And I think some of these are a political feint or head fake designed to accrue negotiating power.
Yeah, I'm not a political expert, but that seems to be the case for many things that he talks about. So
Certainly jarring for those of us that are, small people.
yeah, that's true. Okay. Should I continue to pursue public service loan forgiveness?
Yeah, it's a question for Nate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at this moment in time, the answer is yes. And that is because it is totally out of our control. And I don't see the benefit to making a knee-jerk reaction. You can still, there is, we are on the cusp of everyone starting to pay interest again. So maybe that will change depending on how long it takes. And you need to actively, if for all my PSLF people out there, give me a call, because things are finally starting to change, and there might be a move you finally need to make rather than sitting there waiting for payments to get turned back on. But I would say at this very moment, it seems to be pointing toward, if they've promised you forgiveness, there should be at least a track to get there. Whether or not you will benefit from I'll just put it in direct payment terms. So they might change the payment plans you can be on that qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and therefore it may not be beneficial to you anymore. But I don't, at this very moment, think that it will be completely wiped away.
And then the question is, like, what's the alternative to pursuing public service loan forgiveness, which is, that's always been to refinance, but rates are so much higher now that I would think a refinance would not look good versus continuing to pay on PSLF. Is that right?
The rates have changed back and forth a little bit. I believe refinancing rate, it all depends on what loan you have. It's sort of like a mortgage. If you get a jumbo mortgage, the rate might be terrible. If you get a 15-year mortgage and you put 50% down, maybe the rates don't look so bad. It's similar with student loans. It all depends. But at this very moment, I'd say on average, the rates are pretty close. And so there is no benefit to refinancing at the moment. But there is a reason to not refinance, which is we don't know what's going to happen with student loans.
Well, that, and, you lose the other benefits of having borrowed from the government, which is, the disability, that it's discharged, the disability, death, all those. There's some other perks beyond just the forgiveness that go with having federal direct loans too, that are often overlooked,
Very overlooked. And for those of you out there who don't think that would be you, just last week, I started the application for a family. Physician is permanently disabled and is applying to get all of their $400,000 in student loans discharged.
Wow.
So
that's a game changer.
It's a game changer. It's like buying life insurance, but the only difference is you just get it, and you're giving up your life insurance or your disability insurance if you refinance sometimes.
And, we serve about 230 or 240 physicians today, like doctors, MDs, DOs. And, 1 out of 240, that's not a bad chance.
No. It's a big deal. And so, you have to ask yourself, what's the cost? And if the rate's half as much and you can save $100,000 on your student loans, well, then that's probably worth it. At the moment, it's not the case. I would continue pursuing PSLF and sit in the uncomfort of not knowing what's going to happen. And if you feel that uncomfort in your client, just call me. I have asked all clients that have asked me about student loans, I say, please forward me all emails. Even if it seems totally like I wouldn't care about it, just forward them to me. And I'm crowdfunding my knowledge. So everybody's sending me their emails and I get to see what the government's telling them. So,
That's part of specialization and experience, right?
that's right.
So, all right, on to the next question.
So next question is, what happens if Trump dissolves the FDIC?
This one's for me. This is my question. Yes. So I think it's unlikely to happen, right?
Mhm.
So this is something that was put in place to stabilize the United States banking system and make it so that when you put your money in a bank, that it's guaranteed to be there when you come back for it. Or at least a certain amount is guaranteed. All right. So let's imagine that we all hear the news that the FDIC has been dissolved and that our bank deposits are no longer protected. I don't know about, all the hundreds or thousands of listeners out there, but I'm going to go to the bank and make a withdrawal in cash. Okay. And when everybody does that, they all stand in line to get their cash. Well, there's not that much cash in the bank. This is known as a bank run, a run on the bank. And it is catastrophic for that bank. Now, if this is happening all the way across the economy, that's catastrophic for the economy.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that would happen, would be a bank run. And that would be a crisis of epic proportion. And imagine that decision to get rid of the FDIC would be reversed immediately. It's hard to imagine the level of craze that would go with that. So let's say we get past that hump. Okay. Well, the next thing that would happen is some of the little banks might go out of business, and the big banks would not have to pay as much in FDIC insurance as they do. So this would favor the big banks, the Chases, the Wells Fargos, the big banks out there. It would disfavor the small banks. And a lot of the small banks are the ones where you get your practice buy-in loan, right?
Mhm.
Or they're the ones who help you purchase your building or get a loan for ambulatory surgery center, that kind of thing. They're also the banks where a lot of physicians bank, because community banks and physicians tend to have a tight connection. So it would be directly impactful to physicians in their businesses, right? So that's one thing. And then the next question is, all right, so now I've got my cash. What do I do with it? All right. So I'm thinking, okay, the safest place to invest, at least to this moment, has been in U.S. Treasury debt. So that's T-bills, bonds, and notes backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, such as it is now. So I would think, okay, rather than loading up on FDIC, I would put money in a brokerage account and I'd either buy treasuries or I'd buy an exchange traded fund that buys treasuries. But if the government is going to revoke the FDIC, what is to stop them from welching on the federal debt the next time that we hit a debt ceiling? Which, by the way, is coming March 14th, right? So, it begins to get into doomsday scenarios. And ultimately, the place that you'd wind up putting, quote unquote, safe money would probably be in the debt of large corporations, companies like, Apple. They're borrowers. And their credit rating is actually stronger than the credit rating of the United States government. So it would force a huge dislocation. And I think the likes of this are just unconscionable, not to mention the fact that Congress would probably stand in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that it's the doomsday that would come from it is so nasty that I think the likelihood of it happening is just about zero.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Next question is, will Social Security still be there when I retire?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes. Okay. I'm going to kind of back into this. So Donald Trump has hinted at a third term in office, which is unprecedented since Congress passed we passed the 22nd Amendment that has term limits. We did that after Roosevelt was in office for 4 terms, right? So, he's hinted at that. If he were to basically gut Social Security and Medicare, I think that would be tantamount to political suicide, and it would virtually guarantee no third term. Or at least I would say it would virtually guarantee that he would not be elected, Yeah, so I'm thinking Social Security is still good. Um, I don't know about raising taxes to make Social Security whole. I could see that they might curtail Social Security benefits for people over a certain age, or that they might be reduced. Interestingly, the Department of Government Efficiency has promised they're going to cut $3 trillion out of our $7 trillion annual expenses. But in order to do so, they would either have to cut defense or they'd have to cut the entitlements programs, which is Social Security and Medicare, just because they are the vast proportion, most of our national debt.
Yeah.
And that's both of those are unconscionable in a time when we have, we're threatening to put tariffs on our closest allies, and we're threatening China. It seems unconscionable that they would cut the defense budget. And at the same token, we have a lot of people here that are old and depend on those entitlements. So I think that's not going to fly. And ultimately, they will probably have to back down on their cost-cutting measures, but I doubt that Social Security is going to go
away. Once again, you can see there's some history in Social Security and changes based on how old you are. So it seems like something that's more likely is that they will slowly reduce it. But if you get a plan from Physician Family, we use this Social Security as a measure of conservatism. Like if you have a plan from Chelsea or Nate, it's not calculated with your full Social Security benefit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We look at the report of the Social Security trustees.
That's right.
At least we used to have a report. I'm not sure if that's still being published anymore, because there are some reports that have been curtailed. But in past reports, I believe they said like 70% of benefits are funded. So, we rely on that as a way to kind of hedge against Social Security not being there. And if it is there, then, for physicians, that 30%, that's pretty close to beer and pizza money.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. All right. Last question. Should I update my asset allocation?
On this one, I just have a resounding no. So there's no correlation between which party is in power and market returns. I can remember when Barack Obama came to power, I had several conservative clients say, the stock market's going to tank. And it went up. By the same token, I've had very liberal clients when President Trump originally came to power, stock market's going to tank. It didn't. These predictions are perennially wrong, and I think it is a serious mistake to predicate your asset allocation, which is your balance of stocks and bonds, on the current political office the current political party that's in power. I just think that's a terrible mistake. I mean, if you're 70-30 now because you're 10 years away from retirement, I think that's how you ought to stay. So I would leave that stuff alone. I can tell you I have not changed my asset allocation, and I've not recommended that anyone do so. The reason to change your asset allocation has to do with a change in your life, not a change in the stock market. Let's say you get an inheritance and you double your net worth. Hey, you don't have to be as risky anymore. You can be more conservative. You can shift more towards bonds, right? Or if you decide that you're going to work longer, then maybe that's the time for you to load up on stocks, right? Or let's say you have some money that's left over in your 529 plan. You're building yourself a dynasty college fund for your grandkids. Then you shift your asset allocation towards something that's more aggressive, but you don't shift it for who's going to be in power for 4 years. And with that said, it's important to remember that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years with the presidency. We don't know who the next president will be, but we know for certain that most people who are listening to the show are going to live to their mid 80s, and a lot of them are in their 40s. We know that you're going to need your money for 40 more years. That's long term. 4 years, that's short term. So keep your eye on the long term when you're thinking about your investment.
Yeah. 40 more years means 10 more of these presidents.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
To make a decision every 4 years, I mean, it could literally be catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be terrible for the outcome of someone who's investing.
Yeah. And then, I've heard you say this many times about a variety of things, and I don't think you just mentioned it, but talk about how prices, it's already reflected in the market.
Yes. And that's the one thing that I forgot to say here is that, the market is a voting machine. People
Mhm.
vote with their dollars when they either buy into the market or they take money out of the market. And so as a result, you get the collective thinking of everyone who's a market participant. Some people think it's going to go up, other people think it's going to go down. They put their money in, they take it out. They're all voting. And as a result, all of the information that is knowable at the market at this time is already reflected in market prices. So maybe you're thinking that these tariffs will push up inflation. You're wondering why the price of eggs has not gone down yet. Well, all that is reflected in the price of securities. Somebody out there has figured out the probability that the price of eggs will go up versus go down, because they can look at, feed inputs, they look at probability of bird flu, they look at all those things in a way that just would boggle your mind, you know. And so they've already thought about these things and they place their bets. And so in the moment when you think something's going to happen, guess what? You're just a doctor. I'm just a financial advisor sitting here in Eugene, Oregon, right? There's no way we can know these things like the market can know them. And the fact of the matter is, there's a really good chance that we're going to be wrong because the market knows everything. And when you're wrong, you're out of the money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be a mistake to tamper with your investments based on what you perceive to be the future.
That's right. Okay. That's it for today, Ben. You want to take us out?
Yeah, so I'll take us out. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We tried to be political neutral today. I know this is a hot topic, but we are certainly getting a lot of questions about it. One person I spoke with the other day said, after speaking with you, I know I'm not going to change anything, but it just felt good to hear your voice. That's a shout out to you, George. So if you're in that boat and you're a client, feel free to pick up the phone and call us. We'd be happy to chat with you about this and see if there's any opportunity in here for you. There will undoubtedly be opportunities as we go forward. Okay. Change always brings opportunities. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you have a financial plan and your plan is on the ragged edge of funded, it is time to get real. It's time for you to save more. It's time for you to spend less. It's time for you to dip in and dial up your attention to your personal finances and really get a plan together. If you don't have a plan, my God, it is time. Absolutely time. Your family is counting on you. If you're not ready for a plan, go to physicianfamily.com/quiz and take your retirement wellness quiz. This would be a good time to check in. And until next time, remember, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Thank you for listening to the Physician Family Financial Advisors podcast. Are you getting all the tax breaks you really deserve? To find out, get your copy of the Overtaxed Doctor's Retirement Investing Checklist, available at physicianfamily.com/go. This show is for educational purposes only and is not personalized advice. Consult your tax advisor before taking action. All investments involve risk of loss. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Read show notes for full disclosure.